everyone, before we get started today, I just wanted to jump on and let you know that we are going to be switching from a weekly to a fortnightly release schedule.
For everyone in the US, that means we will be releasing every other week instead of weekly.
And the reason we're doing that is because it's not going to be forever, but just for a little while, we really want to make sure that every single episode of our interviews, of our research recap, is of the highest quality.
And that we're delivering that at a sustainable pace for everyone. We want to continue to be amazing.
Exactly. We've gotten your feedback. We know how much you love getting the latest research, love being able to know that this is something that you can trust in. And we want to make sure that every single episode that we provide to you is a must listen.
So go ahead and hit subscribe, hit like, make sure you've left us a review, and share what you want to hear. We love hearing from you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being part of this community. We have loved doing this for a year now, and we're going to keep doing this for much longer than that. These papers are slightly different from what we usually talk about because they're not surveys. They're actually experiments.
This isn't the first study to look at exercise, but it is the first type to look at this type of exercise.
Usually when people get diagnosed, they're told like, okay, great, we'll try and put you on some medication if you want it. These people came out and had to go through a whole boot camp. Okay, tell me the results. I really want to know. Hello, everyone. Today we have a super exciting episode because we are going to be talking a little bit about what you can do to help your ADHD right now. And the reason we've been doing that is because, we talk a little bit about the research and sometimes we find a strategy or we recommend a strategy, but we wanted to come on and find something straight off the bat. So Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about the papers this week? Because you were the one who found these papers.
I originally set out to bring us what do we know about executive functioning, sort of just to get this started. But I found that test to be a little bit more difficult than expected. There will be more on this in the future.
There will be other episodes on this.
Yeah, and also Skye's going to be writing about that on Substack. But
yes.
What I decided instead was to bring us strategies that we can do right now. What the research is saying is actually making a difference for us right now with our executive functioning struggles. So yeah, I found 2 awesome studies looking at different ways, movement, play. Really excited to talk about the details.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get into it. So the first paper is from Science Direct, and it looks at the effect of an acute bout of exercise, which sounds not great, on executive function and sleep in children with ADHD and ASD. And basically what they wanted to know was whether an acute bout of circus-based exercise, which we'll describe in a second, had an impact on executive function, visual perception, and or the sleep parameters in neurodiverse children. So were people generally better at, executive functioning skills, working memory? Could they see better? Which is a crazy one, but interesting to find out. And also, did they sleep better? So how did they do this?
So first, I want to shout out that this is one of the first papers where I've seen they actually use the word neurodiverse instead of ADHD and ASD. Sort of, they're looking at the whole population and they tell us so. I loved that. So the tides are kind of changing a little bit with the research that's coming out and the language that is being used. So I just wanted to flag that. But yeah, this was a great paper. They were very specific about what they did. They found 34 children, just randomly. No. So this was an outpatient study. So the diagnoses were confirmed by clinicians. So I would imagine that it was somewhat of a convenience, a community sampling of people that were showing up for treatments. It's 34 children, only 4 of which are female. They had them do pre-tests, post-tests, and then they either got to do an exercise condition or a rest condition, so a control.
Yeah. This will be the same in the other paper. These papers are slightly different from what we usually talk about because they're not surveys. They're actually experiments, which is really interesting in itself because I feel like we don't do that many experimental papers. And, there's pros and cons to experiments. I mean, the con is people say it's not very naturalized, but then the pro is that we can get so much more interesting data, which is kind of what they were able to do here.
Yeah, they did a lot of really interesting things to try to maintain consistency. Basically, they ran these conditions over a period of 2 days because they brought in sleep data. They were tracking people's food intake the day prior to the study, really just trying to identify and really eliminate any variance in the conditions between study days. It was really cool.
Yeah. So tell me about the exercise. What was an acute bout of circuit-based exercise?
In the paper, there's sort of 6 different ones, I think. And they call them bilateral coordinative exercises, which means to me you're using both sides.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Coordination going on. I mean, one of the examples here is, participants instructed to walk around a coned area while bouncing a basketball, first with their left hand, then with their right hand, and then using alternating hands. So sort of, we're talking about a series of exercises where you have to maintain that same physical coordination with your hands, your eyes. Oh my gosh, there was another one where they changed the instructions halfway through. So red light no longer means stop, it means go.
Interesting.
I feel like that one would take me out.
Yeah. I think that is true. It would be. And that's kind of the sort of physical Stroop test in that way.
Well, the Stroop test is actually part of this as well. That was how they were measuring
cognitive functioning tests.
Yes. Yeah, it was one of the cognitive functioning tests they used. They used 3 different ones.
Yeah. They actually had to do a lot. I hope these people were well compensated. They had to keep a food diary. They had to overnight fast, repeat the same foods on specific days. They had to do a bunch of exercise, and then they had to wear something on their wrist when they slept, which is a lot. I mean, usually when people get diagnosed, they're told okay, great, we'll try and put you on some medication if you want it. Maybe they get one kind of piece of advice on who to go see next. These people came out and had to go through a whole boot camp.
Yeah, that's really true. They do talk about it in their limitations that not all participants completed all aspects of the study. So some people didn't have the sleep measures. Maybe it might have been a sensory issue, they couldn't sleep with it on their wrist.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Sometimes I don't think I always do well sleeping with something on my wrist. Yeah.
And this paper does I think it was open access too, but this paper does a great job of trying to accommodate and consider the sensory experience of their participants. Yeah.
That's really cool.
I know. It felt really nice to read all the different ways they did that.
Yeah.
I think there was also headphones. Do you want them? You can say yes or no kind of thing.
We love choices. People will ask what we want with ADHD. Choices, more choices. Okay. So what did they find?
Everything they were looking for. I mean, it just says improvements in accuracy across all of the tests. So basically, I think I skipped a little bit about how they were actually doing this. So first they would do the Stroop test, and then they would have people go out and do the exercise, the physical exercise activity. And then they would rest. And then they would take another cognitive test to see if there was an improvement from the pre-test. If that makes sense. So they take the Stroop test again.
Interesting.
Following the exercise and the period of rest, the cognitive performance was just better.
Awesome. That's really, really cool.
However, it did say that the response time was slower after the exercise trial.
Fair enough.
It says also that sleep really had no effect here. It didn't differ across any parameter. Yeah.
Interesting. So it was really just that executive functioning, that ability, and the cognitive test that improved.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
This is quite a nice paper for us because the truth is I saw a paper like this a couple of years ago and have since built some of this movement being important into some of the advice that we give, because obviously we're sort of research-based when we give advice. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to see another paper that kind of backs up what we were saying. But if somebody is new to this and they're like, okay, so what does that mean for me today? Do you have any advice for them, Sarah, of what they could do right now that might help them if they're like, I need to get this admin done and I'm feeling a little bit fuzzy? What does the research say I should do?
Bounce a basketball according to specific rules.
Number one, find
attend a PE class.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Well, that's exactly what it. That's exactly what the paper says.
You're totally right. It was very specific. I think what we can take from that is movement is important, and maybe bouncing a ball.
I think it's a controlled movement too. I don't think it's just like go outside and like flail around for 15 minutes. I think it's like go outside and do a jump rope for 15 minutes. We're talking about like repetitive activities. It almost sounded like these were intentional fidgets. Like we fidget because we're trying to regulate ourselves. And it sounds like these were the same kind of repetitive trial physical tasks. So maybe the thing is, it actually is going outside and bouncing a basketball, but like counting.
Yeah.
And then switching your hand and then counting again. Maybe it's jump rope. And then like, I don't know, maybe you do tricks or I don't know, just spin around. I don't know, do something. But it has to be controlled. It has to be intentional.
That is so interesting. I will say we've got a mountain, like a large hill next to our house. And I've recently started going up it every day, like trying to go up it every day. And I will say I've noticed my ability to get through the afternoon has improved. And I'm wondering if I sort of knew that there was likely that this was helpful, but it's interesting that you said it's that repetitive movement because I'm actually pushing a stroller up this hill because I have a small child. And it's
strength training as well.
Yeah, strength training. We're doing all of it here. But it's a very repetitive movement. You kind of spend a lot of time just putting one foot in front of the other, like very intentionally. And there is something nice about that. That is very interesting.
Yeah, this study goes on to talk about, like in their discussion section, they talk about how this isn't the first study to look at exercise, but it is the first type to look at this type of exercise. So previously we were looking at just aerobics, martial arts is another really big topic for like ADHD exercise literature, apparently. But this one is really significant because it showed to have an impact and improvement on working memory. And none of those others really showed that same strength.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like I said, it is backed up by a paper a couple of years ago. So I think we're starting to see a growing information on this particular effect on executive functioning.
They made sure to put acute in italics, like these effects are acute. Like I was like, wait, do I know the definition of acute? Yeah, like significant. Like I wanted to find out how significant. And yeah, the table is pretty clear. I mean, it's not going to mean anything to read off a bunch of numbers, but
it's a very, very low margin of error. It's like the p-value is significant to the 0.001 for those who know.
It checks out.
Yeah, it's basically as significant as you can get. I have never seen anything more significant
and
than
it's
that.
Open access, so
yes,
you can find out for yourself. Yeah,
check it out, have a look, get behind some of the research, support them. Share the post, share the article. Hey, you listening to this podcast. If you like what we do and you want to hear more of it, there is one way to make sure that happens. Please go ahead, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. We have been told 5-star reviews can help us to get seen by more people, which means more people are going to learn about ADHD strategies.
Just press the button. Just give us a 5-star review.
Okay, so let's talk about the second one then, which is The second one is interesting. It's a bit of a different take on executive functioning. We're not moving in this one. We sort of are, but not acutely, I guess. This is the effect of a group-based play therapy on executive function, working memory, and self-efficacy in children with ADHD. And what they were really trying to do was they were saying, okay, well, we know that group play therapy teaches children conflict resolution skills, and this could, enhance their cognitive abilities. It could help them manage psychological conflicts. It could result in just overall a better quality of life. So they wanted to see what this would do for children specifically. And I will say it's interesting because one of the things we know, and I don't know how much they get into it in this paper, but we do know that with ADHD, we really struggle with emotions and relationships and communication and all of those things. And, it can be a tough conversation to talk about. So it's nice to see it here with kids.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to see play therapy come up in the literature because when I was still in school, they weren't teaching about that. I didn't take any art therapy classes, so I think that would have been like the beginning of this modality. Anyway, so yeah, it was really cool to read about it here. I hope to see many more types.
Yeah, bring on play therapy.
Yeah, I'm going to stop right now and just say that serendipitously, I was sent an article last night that would have been perfect for this episode, but we're just going to come back to it because I know there's going to be more on this topic and I want to keep talking about skills that we can do to improve our executive functioning. So,
yeah, but Fred, we got your article and we really appreciated it.
Yes. And you know what? Maybe we can just have the author on instead.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Anyway, so this paper was done in 2023. They collected 40 children with ADHD. Should I say that again?
No, I think you should, but I think it's great. So they rounded up 40 children.
They collect. Oh no. Okay. So we've got a sample of 40 children, sort of in the 7 to 12-year-old range. They say right out they were using convenience sampling. They sort of randomly selected whether these kids were going to go in the experimental group or in the control group.
And we looked in the control group and we could not find any information on what the control group did. So we sort of have to assume that they sat in a room and did nothing for the period of time.
Yeah, it was very interesting. They took us through great detail what happened in the experimental play-based therapy sessions. Yeah, and they told us exactly when those happened, how often, but they don't say exactly what the control group did.
It just feels like maybe they forgot. So
probably nothing.
If you listened, if that is not true, then please tell us because at the moment we just have to assume they did nothing.
Yeah. So the play group was 10 sessions held twice a week. So that means basically a little over a month of these biweekly sessions. They lasted for 45 minutes each. And it's not super specific what happened, but it just says that the therapy included various activities aimed at promoting different skills and addressing specific needs, such as emotional release, anger management, relaxation, and problem-solving abilities. Additionally, the therapy sessions incorporated elements such as diaphragmatic breathing, paper and pen exercises, sand tray play. So to me, that's sensory stations.
Yeah, I love that.
They could read books. It looks like there was some gym equipment that they could do some balance exercises. So, all right, it seems to me like it was really patient driven what activities they engaged in, but that there were an offering of different types of play.
Yeah. I do have to say at this point, I know which experiment I would rather have been a part of.
The one where you did nothing?
No, the one versus the one where you do the exercise versus this one. I'm like, this sounds sand trays and you can go on balance beams. Like if this also supports your working memory, then I don't know. Maybe do both in a day, but I know which one I would pick to be part of.
So it sounds like maybe the treatment method that we should be developing for ADHD adults is like drop-in play centers. for us.
No, seriously. Yeah, we need drop-in playgrounds. Maybe we could, what would be amazing would be like if there was I know that, workspaces in Google and they have like a slide or something like that. But how cool would it be if a workspace had like a whole playground area, like an adult, like where you could like do various forms of play and it wasn't weird somehow, because I know that sounds very strange. That would be so cool.
It doesn't sound any more strange than putting a gym in your office.
Yeah, and we could still have that, but I think it would be fun.
Yeah, sure. Like that's one way that some people like to play.
That's one way, but like also, balance beams, also like hanging from various things. That would be so fun. Oh,
I am terrible at balancing, but I still enjoy doing the balance beams because I laugh so much at how bad I am at balancing. So it's still like
we're about on the same page with that. It's fun. Like
good to know.
Yeah, when you stop trying to, compete in the Olympics or any, you're just going across. It's a good time.
That Australian break dancer really just holding space for all of us.
I'm New Zealand. I'm a New Zealander. I just wanna say. Oh gosh, I wonder how dated that reference is going to be by the time this episode comes out.
That is a great point. I have no idea.
You will still remember. It'll be a
Christmas
thing
time.
People will be like, oh God. Okay.
We haven't finished talking about what they did. Okay, so the play therapy is really important, but also talking about how they measured the cognitive abilities as well is really important. So they did a similar pre-test, post-test situation. So you'll recognize the digit span test, that one they did for working memory. It's basically just like, you have to connect these numbers in the order that we tell you, or repeat these numbers in the order that we give you. And then also a new one here, the Tower of London test. And it's to measure executive function. Skye, do you know that one?
I don't. I feel like I've heard about it, but honestly, I might have just heard of the Tower of London. Like my brain is not pulling anything.
I'd never heard of it. So apparently it involves beads and basically it's just like pattern matching. You have to arrange them in the way that they want you to. I think it says that there are other performance criteria involved, like how long it takes you and how many times you have to like rearrange things because you made a mistake. That also sounds like a really intense test. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound as much fun as the balance beam.
No, you're right. They did have to do something.
Oh, and also they measured self-efficacy with a questionnaire, and I was able to find it.
Wow. Good job, Sarah. Honestly, you're just out here finding. In case you guys don't know, Sarah is like a researching, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but you'll go to the deepest ends of the internet to find what you need to find.
I am so curious.
Yeah.
And it will bother me if I don't know. Which is why, like, if I'm ever shouting out to you guys like, hey, I don't know the answer. Can you please tell me? Or if you want to talk to me about this thing, please reach out to me. I really mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really mean it. So now you guys can head on over to the Substack and sort of try to join our community there. And we'll be answering questions there as well.
So what was the patient questionnaire? I'm looking at it right now. So they said your health is excellent.
Yeah, it's basically a measure of like, how do you feel about your performance? Do you feel like you've accomplished less than you would have liked? How much did pain interfere with your normal daily activities?
Gosh.
Would you say you have a lot of energy? That sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's really a broad health questionnaire. And it's kind of crazy to me that this must have been adapted for the kids a little bit. It does say that they used, they adapted it into their native language, but also hopefully they adapted it a little bit for children.
Yeah. How many chores do you do? Like, how much cooking are you doing during the day?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's always good to have a questionnaire about your self-perceptions.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that's interesting.
That definitely impacts your executive functioning abilities, you know?
Definitely. Okay, tell me the results. I really want to know.
So they found a significant difference in all of the measures. So the executive functioning improved, the working memory improved, their self-efficacy improved, significantly.
Again, p-value at the 0.001, aka very significant.
Originally, in the pretest, the play therapy and the control values were about the same on all of these cognitive tests and the questionnaire. But then after the test, I mean, we're looking at a 5-point difference here, 14 to 20. I mean,
yeah.
Whereas in the beginning, it was less than a 1-point difference. So
yeah.
I would call that significant.
I think so. I think it's really significant. And I think it's so interesting to know that this was also significant. I think this is kind of one of the things that I talk about a lot with clients. And again, it's quite nice to have this, is that while this doesn't provide, proof of anything, it does indicate that even if you can't do really intense exercise right now, just being able to do some kind of play is going to be helpful with your executive functioning as well. It's not like you're like, well, I can't work out for 45 minutes, so I'm not going to try anything at all. It'll still be good if you just balance on something.
Or just make yourself laugh.
Yeah. Do something cool. Do something to just get out of your head, something to get into your body, and maybe a little bit of movement as well.
When I read diaphragmatic breathing, I was like, oh, so they're just having these kids scream in the room, right? Because that's what I think of.
Yeah.
That's real, a real breathing instead of that baby shallow breathing that we do.
Yeah, that we all do. Yeah.
I'm breathing just enough to keep myself alive.
Just enough to be alive, but not enough to feel.
Limits. Yeah, so there were some limitations here. I mean, obviously a convenience sample is always a limitation because it's just people who are already interested in doing this kind of thing. And then also they didn't collect any socioeconomic data on these kids, nor did they really share much about their demographics other than the age.
Yeah. And I will say maybe an overall limitation for both of these papers is they were both done on kids. But also, you'll find if you have a look at the research, a lot of these kinds of papers are done on kids. Probably easier to get compliance when you're working with kids and parents than if you're working with adults who don't want to do it. But it is a limitation. Obviously, we don't know for sure if adults' brains work differently in some kind of a way.
My personal opinion is that adult brains probably work worse than children.
Yeah. Probably benefit more.
All those conditioned poor responses that we have by adulthood, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing is we don't have the data on it, but it does still lead you to conclude that, this kind of activity is something you might want to start including in your day a bit more, even if it's just for 10 minutes.
It's totally in line with the stuff that Abby was talking about a few weeks ago with
it really did make me think of it.
Autonomic nervous system regulation, the play. Playing is so important, and movement can be part of play. And this is related to my opinion, but, as grownups, we kind of forget what we do for play. We forget to play. We forget how to play. But it's such an interest, apparently it's such an integral part of working memory and executive function.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is going to become more of a conversation. At least it is for us, in our community. Once you get past the overwhelm to focus and stuck to proactive, which I know sounds insane, but once you do, because there are ways to support your executive functioning to get there, often what we're left with is a real need to play, because that's where you get the consistency what makes every week, which can feel repetitive, feel different and interesting enough for you to stay engaged is, do you play? Do you have dopamine? Do you have movement? And so that becomes a very fundamental and important part of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes, if the answer is no, you're not playing, no, you don't have dopamine, then you also probably don't have the energy to do sort of like the bare minimum to stay not overwhelmed. It sort of becomes like a drain on the routines that can already be feeling too heavy.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree, Sarah. And I just think it makes me really sad because this is something that we talk about a lot. And this is the thing where I see a lot of resistance. People are very quick to be like, you're right, I need a system and a structure. And I'm probably not going to do it very well, but I'm going to try because, I'm not doing very well. But then when I say, oh, and now it's time to get involved with play and fun, there's a lot of resistance around like, do I deserve this? Am I allowed this? And the truth is, whether you do or don't, I mean, obviously I would say you do, but whether you do or don't, it's just fundamentally how our brains are wired with ADHD. So it's a necessity. It's not really an option.
Joy feels like an extra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's sort of like you have to wait around for it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was sharing in the community that we have about watching the moon rise. And
yes.
I can't believe you were brave enough to share this. But you said that you'd never really heard of someone watching the moon rise. And
yes.
First of all, I took that as a compliment. I was like, wow, I guess I do take time for what I enjoy. But it seems like such a small thing that I don't always give myself credit for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just like, it was just a really small way that I brought some levity. But it felt so small. But it was so helpful.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, if this is one of the things you take away from today's research, it's that those small things had a big impact. You might think like, that's not that much exercise, or you have balance beam,
immediately,
really?
And days
but it had
after.
an impact. Yeah, on that one, on the other paper, on the paper that we wrote, used to base some of our strategies on several years ago. Yeah, definitely. Just have a go. I always talk about this experimental mindset. It's so helpful to have an experimental mindset where you're just kind of coming in and saying, hey, I'm just going to try something and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. And that will be interesting. And maybe it'll work a little bit and not as much as I wanted. And that'll be interesting too. And we can make an adjustment. And so having that experimental mindset with this topic is going to really help you.
And if it doesn't work the first way that you've trialed it, you can trial it a different way. Just remember to stay excited about the newness. Instead of getting discouraged that you have to rearrange this again and try it differently, like just be excited that you have a new chance for novelty.
Yeah, exactly. Like playing and figuring things out and trying new things to play with is kind of a part of ADHD maintenance when we get down to it. And if you need any tips, you can always reach out to us. We have a bunch, just DM me and I'll send you, I think I've got a list of 32 different kinds of play that I've been sending people. So you can just DM me on Instagram and I'll send you those.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, well, that is it, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy. Go do something fun. And we will see you here next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, everyone. And a big thank you to Adam for making us sound great and Anastasia for making us look great. We couldn't do it without you.
And if you're looking for any of the references to the papers that we discussed, head on over to our show notes page because I always bring the receipts.
Plus, if you want to find out more about us or any more deep diving into what we're doing, you can find us on Substack. That's where the community is. That's where we're chatting. And you can see all of the fun and exciting things that we are bringing to the table.
Thanks for being here.